Huwag yung kayong magkadisgrasyahan tayo niyan. Sinasabi ko madidisgrasya kayo. At madidisgrasya kayo. Hindi ako urong dito. And I said, I would stake my honor, my life, and even the presidency.
Through concrete action and cooperation. The realization of an ASEAN community, Vision 2025, is a consolidation of community building efforts and the ASEAN centrality. It mirrors Ambition Natin 2040, where all Filipinos will be able to work, enjoy a work-life balance, comfortable existence, and access to basic needs and services. The aspiration of ASEAN embraces not only the Philippines, but other and all ASEAN states, member states. We are Filipino first. We are ASEAN brothers and sisters. The 51st founding anniversary of ASEAN celebrates our ASEAN identity and its timeless values of centrality, consultation, and cooperation, and respect for each other's individuality by continually observing ASEAN's long-valued principles since its birth on August 8, 1967. We look forward to a more peaceful, stable, and prosperous ASEAN. Long live ASEAN. Thank you for allowing me to read our statement for tomorrow. It's very important that we realize that in a global community, we have to be good neighbors. It's not always easy. In fact, friends that you haven't seen for a long time, relatives who do not live with you or near you are sometimes much more easy to deal with than neighbors. Because you have to deal with your neighbor at breakfast, at lunchtime, in the evening, late at night, during special occasion, during crisis. So any and all kinds of irritants can come up. So in 1967, ASEAN was so dynamic, there's so much differences, that the founding fathers came together and said, we're going to be war torn. Walang mangyayari dito sa atin if we don't come together. And now there are 10 nations and more want to join, and we have strategic partners, dialogue partners. And we are facing, everyone agreed during the meetings that it is uncertain times, it is volatile times, there's so much danger in the world, but everyone also agreed that there's so much opportunity. Whatever you talk about, cooperation, technology, innovation, resiliency, there's so much opportunity for us to come together. And of course, we're all praying for the success of the US-North Korea TPRK summit, and hope that the agreements they have reached will lead to a peaceful and a denuclearized Korean peninsula. Dealing with the issues in the West Philippine Sea, South China Sea, has obviously also been on the radar or on the central to the discussions of ASEAN with its strategic partners, especially with China, in the last few years. No? So we are happy to take over as country coordinator of China. We will be doing this job for the next 3 years. And it is an important job because finally the ASEAN member states and China see eye to eye in the need for a effective COC. We've not always agreed about the timing or the need for an effective COC. But now, everyone in the region agrees, and of course our strategic partners, our dialogue partners have their concerns, have their ideas, have their national positions, and that will be helpful in molding the COC. But it's very important that we get this done so that we can be good neighbors to each other and not allow irritants in the relationship to be the sum total of our relationships. So let me just clear that up. No one is expected to turn his back or her back on their national position. Whatever their stand is on territorial claims and on sovereignty rights, whether it's in accordance with historical rights, it's in accordance with UNCLOS, it's in accordance with whatever basis, we don't expect countries to suddenly see the situation different. But we expect a mechanism where we'll be able to deal with each other effectively, put this irritant or this dispute in one level of our relationship, but at the same time turn the South China Sea into a zone of peace, stability, and development. A very, very low-lying fruit is the marine ecology or environment. Claimant and non-claimant states all have a stake in having a healthy marine ecology, of the coral reefs, of spawning grounds for fish, of preventing plastic, from going into the ocean and polluting our ocean. So there's so much that we can do, and there's so much low-lying fruit that we should take care of. So when it comes now to the Philippines, I'd just like to thank Justice Carpio and Congressman Alejandro. I heard their statements about the possible joint exploration and joint development. Let me just make this reiteration. Number one, I will confirm to them that any agreement will be in accordance with the Philippine Constitution. We cannot come up with any agreement that is unconstitutional. That is just not cannot be done. We are representing government, and government's framework, of course, is confined to the Philippine Constitution. Number two, sabi kasi nung iba, why didn't you start negotiating with 100% or 80%? There are standard contracts in the oil and gas industry, and many of these are 50-50. But it depends on the capital and the technology that you put in, or technical expertise. So what I've said is not 60-40 alone. What I said is that our starting proposition, the Philippine starting proposition, is malampaya. If any country, including China, is willing to give us, in disputed areas, the same that we got from malampaya, how can anyone argue that we lost some of our sovereign rights? Because sovereign rights is economic rights. No? And even international experts say that exercising, enjoying your sovereign rights or economic entitlements is a way of using UNCLOS or implementing the arbitration award. That's why I really don't know where it came from when former President Aquino said, wala naman tayong obligasyon sa China. He said, why deal with China? We don't have an obligation with China. That's why I'm asking him, what's your alternative? Because we've been talking to countries around the world, who will come into an area that is disputed and they do not have the Navy, and even if they do have the military equipment or Navy, will the companies take the risk of investing billions of dollars just for exploration and test wells? So for us, it's a matter of principled pragmatism. We have certain principles. The Philippines has to get this, but we're also pragmatic. Why? What's better, 60-40 or 0-0? Because if we don't get anything from there, malampaya is running out. The estimates, recent estimates I saw was 2040. And malampaya, 40 to 50% of power of Luzon. So can you imagine the prices of energy and power if we have to import gas? So we are taking our responsibilities very seriously in providing for future Filipino generations. And if there are living and non-living resources in the West Philippine Sea, South China Sea, and we can come up with a framework that is win-win-win, why not? If not, it's our job to preserve, to make sure that the environment is not destroyed and that oil and gas is not harvested by one party unilaterally at the expense of the other claimants. So there are still many points where Congressman Alejandro and Justice Carpio and I disagree. That's part of democracy. But they've been out there, they've been saying their stand, they've been debating with us. So let me end there by just telling President Aquino, I meant no disrespect to him. And I did not start this argument with him. It is he who had an interview saying, please be more transparent. How much more transparent can we be? You know, without damaging our national interest or diplomatic negotiations. From day one, the Duterte administration has been open about its dealings with China. There are no secret meetings, there's no secret dealings, everything is above board. President Aquino's argument against Chinese loans is simply pointing to another country, Sri Lanka, without telling us the difference of circumstances or even Filipinos being familiar with the situation of Sri Lanka. So that's, you know, in grade school and high school, we're taught that faulty generalization. You know, so if you had one bad experience in one Filipino restaurant, then you will say all Filipino restaurants are not good. What kind of logic is that? No? The Philippines have our partners. We borrow money. We have ODA. We have soft loans. We have aid coming from different countries, and we're responsible members of the international community. So I'm not taking away from President Aquino that his administration has also done a lot of good things, even some great things. You know, having said that, his administration was not infallible. You know, they did make mistakes, and rather than just keep saying wrong ang policy, it's easy to say that our policy is wrong, but you have to understand first what was the take-off point of the Duterte administration's policy. It was when he lost Calvoro during his presidency, and until now the records are not clear of what actions the Aquino government did before, during, and after the standoff. You know, so let me put it in another way. We all felt bad, and we felt for our team, we felt for our country, we felt for our players, but we felt bad when Philippine and Australian teams had a fight, diba? But that does mean let's not talk about it? Or do we have to quietly analyze? What did we do right? What did we do wrong? What could have prevented it? What can we do after this? So what's wrong in reassessing what were the things that President Aquino ordered? Was it all the fault of the Chinese side? Or did the Filipinos also do anything that provoked the standoff? Or after the standoff, is the only thing we can do go to arbitration court, or could we have done anything else? No, it's only by learning from the past actions that you can make the correct decisions and have the modicum or the hope that your decisions are right. Because what is Einstein's definition of stupidity? Doing the same thing, expecting a different result. You know, so we don't want to just keep doing the same thing and then just hoping or wishing that something else happens. So I am really hoping, praying, and appealing to President Aquino, be part of the national debate. President Ramos and was it President Estrada, faced the Senate on certain issues after their presidency. President Aquino himself, diba, in the Deng Sabaksha case, appeared before the Senate. So rather than just criticize the Duterte administration in our policy of friends to all, enemies to none, but hindi rin siya dumalo sa committee at mag-testify din siya, no, kung ano yung mga nangyari, because it's very hazy. You look at the records, Senator Trillanes is saying something different from Secretary Del Rosario, and it's not that clear in the records whether the one making the decision was President Aquino, Secretary Del Rosario, or if Senator Trillanes had that authority to order certain things. So it is only in understanding that situation that you can understand the initial analysis of the Duterte administration, and I was not Secretary of Foreign Affairs yet, but why, why we had to talk to China, what we talked about with China, how we move forward, If you don't see the whole picture, you won't understand that. So if you have a house and your contractor says, we have to repair the foundations because there are may anay na or if you did not know what your foundation is made of, you don't know the history, you don't know if you're built over clay or sand, you can't make the right decision. So I'm hoping, I'm also ready anytime, any place. If you'd like a one-on-one debate, if you'd like to bring Secretary Del Rosario or Senator Trillanes, it shouldn't even be a debate. It should be a discussion, a healthy discussion of what the correct policy is and how to build, our relationship with our neighbors and how to handle the West Philippine Sea, South China issue professionally in accordance with our interests and with our territorial and sovereign rights. So let me stop there and invite you to the discussion.
Sir, we know that China and ASEAN has agreed on a single draft document that will be the basis for the formal negotiations of the code of conduct. So, how soon will the formal negotiations start? Do we have to wait for the November summit? And can you tell us some of the details of this draft?
I'll answer your second question first. The nature of these negotiations, especially that it's between claimants and then it's between ASEAN member states and China, if you start talking about details, it might not get done. Because, it's not like if there's the two of you and you say yes, I said no. This one will say 7, one will say 5, one will say 4, one will say nothing more than 6, one will say nothing more than 10, So having a single draft is already a breakthrough. And I refer and defer to the statement of our chairman, Singapore, of Foreign Minister and Dr. Vivian Krishna, that he made statements about the COC. So we can't really give you the details. In fact, I read it in front of me, the different proposals, the single draft, but it was 20 minutes later it was taken away from us. Precisely so that the negotiating team, can have that room to negotiate without emotions or without pressures from different countries and different interests at that time. How fast can we start? ASAP. We can start. Usually, our senior officials meet. They've done a lot of good work. We wouldn't got them here if not the office in the first floor, all the way up to our senior leaders have done a good job. I think it will help that the Philippines is now the country coordinator of China, because in this case we have both interest. In one sense, as a claimant, we have a separate interest, but as the country coordinator and trying to get China and ASEAN states together, it's a different interest. So we're going to wear more than 2 hats in this occasion. So there's going to be a lot of faith in us that because we are also claimant states, that we will not be one-sided. So as to the time frame, I'll defer to our chairman, but everyone wants it to happen sooner than later.
For the leaders summit?
It's hard to give a deadline and a date, and no one is expecting the negotiations to be easy, but everyone is looking forward to the day that we can actually sign.
Sir, how significant is this COC draft for both the claimant and non-claimant countries in terms of stabilizing the situation in South China?
Well, put it this way, you look at the 1940s, 1960s, 1980s, 90s, then until now, So there have been periods in time that, it's been very smooth. no tempers flaring. There's been times that skirmishes bilaterally by some countries. There have been times that claimants among themselves couldn't agree. But it's becoming a major concern, security concern around the world, because it's becoming a playing field also for regional rivalries. And while everyone is talking about freedom of navigation and the importance of the sea lane, obviously it also has to do with the security, no, of the region and of course world powers. So given all of that, if we have a COC and it's effective means that it's implemented well. I mean that everyone is doing their best, and possibly that there will be an enforcement mechanism. Then it will give us stability, and it will open the doors for peaceful cooperation. For example, in the environment, no country will tell you they don't want to protect the marine ecology and environment. But if we start fighting, whose Coast Guard will go there? Whose Coast Guard will apprehend who? Who issues what guidelines to who? Then you're back to square one, and you're back to the debate, whose territory or who has sovereign rights. But if you have a COC, that disregards first, does not abandon your territorial or sovereign right claims, but acknowledges that there are things we can do together to have peace and stability, then that will be a jackpot, or it will be a mechanism for us to do much more together in the South China Sea.
Yes, good afternoon, Secretary. Still a question on the single draft code of conduct. You said that you cannot disclose the details, but can you at least give us the Philippine position on certain matters, like, for example, on what the role of third party should be on the South China Sea disputes as stipulated in the code of conduct? And for the second question, sir, are there still is the Philippines still trying to negotiate the inclusion of the arbitral ruling on the code of conduct, or is this a matter that has been set aside entirely by the Philippines when it comes to the inclusion in the document?
Let me take your first question, details. As I said, we need diplomatic space to be able to negotiate. Now, what role does a third party play? Is it legally binding or not? Will there be an enforcement mechanism? If yes, will it be an arbitration mechanism? If yes, what country? How can it be done? These are all questions on everyone's mind, and it's part of the negotiation. That's why everyone agreed more or less to call it effective COC. What is an effective COC? And a COC that all of us can rely on. Because let's take a step backwards. There's a 2002 DOC. But the problem is, between 2002 to now 2018, 16 years, there's still so much disagreement. What is militarization? Who can or cannot occupy features? What about land reclamation? What about your entitlements under UNCLOS, etc.? No? Okay. So having said all of that, take a look at all of that. After the DOC 2002, before that, you have the 1982 UNCLOS. The 1982 UNCLOS is a legally binding document. But the problem is, there were reservations, and many who signed said that they also have territorial claims. So which goes to your second question. Your second question is about the arbitral award. Okay. The arbitral award is an interpretation of UNCLOS. And UNCLOS does not deal with territorial issues. Okay? So, hello? Hello? Yeah. Okay. So, let me repeat that lang na namatay yung mic. So, the arbitration award is a award based on the interpretation of UNCLOS. UNCLOS, we are a signatory. UNCLOS, what did UNCLOS say about militarization and about our complaints about resupplying some of the features that we have, no? Ang sabi ng arbitration award dyan, it's not within our jurisdiction. Militarization and territorial, it's not within the jurisdiction of the arbitral award. So, you know, it's not true that we've ever abandoned the arbitration award. I've talked to a lot of people who've talked, this is official meetings, have told me, sir, why don't you enforce the arbitral award? Apparently, there's a misunderstanding about the arbitral award. The arbitral award does not deal with territorial claims. There are two disputes, UNCLOS and territorial. We don't believe that our position is weak. In fact, we believe our position is the correct position. We believe that we have undisputed rights to our territory and that UNCLOS is effective and we have undisputed rights to our sovereign rights or entitlements. But when you ask some of our allies, will the Mutual Defense Treaty, for example, kick in? What will they answer? They will not answer, because there's an arbitral award, we can. They will say, and this is the official position of the United States, we do not get involved. We cannot take sides in territorial disputes. So all the critics can say that there is no territorial disputes, but read all the books, or if I can take a page out of President Aquino's, i-Google natin, there are territorial disputes. Okay, so having said all of that, what did the arbitration award say? It said, eto yung character ng mga characteristics ng mga features. Okay, ang sinabi niya, eto sa fishing, eto sa environment, eto sa safety of the life, the seas, and then eto sa living and non-living resources, living fish, di ba? Tapos non-living yung hydrocarbon, oil and gas. Okay. During President Aquino's time, panay arbitral award na bungang bibig, but we could not fish. Now our fishermen are back and we have a tentative fishing agreement. Second, before, when the waves are high or there's a weather disturbance, you cannot go inside the shoal to protect your fishermen and ships. Now we have a tentative agreement with China. So if there's a danger out at sea, they can go in and they will be assisted. Third, in the environment, there used to be an unabated, kanya-kanya, whether giant clams yan, any kind of fish, spawning grounds, you can fish anywhere. Now we have tentative agreements and we're bringing everyone in of what areas we can proclaim as marine sanctuary, etc. And then we're discussing oil and gas. And our discussion with oil and gas are progressing quite well. Last night I asked the President if I can form already the working group, and he approved it. So, if you're going to say, do I always mention the word arbitration award? You're correct, I don't keep mentioning it. But if you're going to ask, are we implementing it? Sila, finay lang nila eh. Kami ginagawa namin. Everything the arbitration award says, we're pursuing. But if we're talking to China. Now, if China says we can talk about anything under UNCLOS, but don't mention the award, okay? Because we don't believe in it. Does it matter to us? If we're disputing each other about the car, and you keep saying that car is from your grandfather, but you have a registro, you have everything else, ganyan. If I tell you, Brad, I'll talk to you, but don't mention your grandfather anymore, it's irritating to me. But I'm willing to talk to you about it. I'm willing to look at ownership and everything. Won't you talk to me to try to settle? Especially if I have a good faith. O sige, I'll start letting you use the car. While we're talking, sino may-ari ng car. So, some people, basically the advocates of the Aquino administration policy, became attached to the approach. The Duterte administration is not attached to any approach. We are attached to the end result, to the goals. Our goals is to secure our territory and sovereign rights and to start enjoying the sovereign rights. So that's what I'm not saying our approach is perfect. But I'm asking President Aquino and the others, what's your alternative? So in oil and gas, if you don't want at least as good as Malampaya, and you don't want to deal with China, what's your alternative? Let's let Malampaya run out and let's have energy prices go up. You know, that's our argument there. You know, so that's how it's been. No? So sa COC, everyone will try to avoid. You know, everyone will put in issues that are most important to them, but everyone will try to avoid anything that will be a deal breaker to one or many other parties. Sir.
Sir, about the 60-40, I understand that this is 60-40 in favor of the Philippines. Ibig po ba sabihin nito ay nagparaya na yung China dun sa assertion nila ng indisputable sovereignty?
No. That is precisely the point of the talks, and thank you for that question. No? If we're going to wait for a decision on territory, it might take forever. Might take 1 year, might take 100 years, might take forever. Maybe by the time we're all relying on wind and solar, or when some technology has come and oil and gas is not that important anymore. But for us to come to some kind of agreement, which is the same as COC, we have to put aside territorial and sovereign rights claims, no, but not abandon them. No, the best example I can give you is Fort Bonifacio. When the Makati cityhood and Taguig cityhood was in Congress, you need the boundaries. Kung wala kang boundaries, you can have a cityhood law. Eh hindi naman papayag ang Makati na they'll say Fort Bonifacio is Taguig. At lalong hindi papayag ang Taguig to say Fort Bonifacio is Makati. So what did they put in the law? Subject to final outcome of the courts. No? So the preliminary agreement is based on let's cooperate first and let's talk about who owns what, who has jurisdiction later on. Okay. So now I just want to reiterate the 60-40 is not the be-all end-all. I'm saying it has to be sa Malampaya. Same or better than our deal with Malampaya. No? And Malampaya is structured under 60-40. But we're negotiating for better than that. So kung sa Malampaya, X yung investment, yet they're given 40%. In our case, if they can go over the amount of investment in Malampaya, but still give us 60%, why not? No?
Sir, if China has this outstanding assertion of indisputable sovereignty that they're bringing into the talks, what is the Philippines' outstanding position as well, in contrast to the indisputable sovereignty?
We also have indisputable sovereignty over our territory, which is defined by the Philippine Constitution. And we also have indisputable claims under UNCLOS. No? So, but again, where do we take it from there? So, if, you know, when you talk of property, it's easier because if it's land, is there a title? You know, if it's a car, do you have a registration, no? But let's say someone picked up or a cell phone, my name, no? But let's say a very generic pen, no, was found, and you can show me a picture of you using it. I can show you a picture of me using it. So what do? Do we leave it in court and say no one uses it until we decide? That's one possibility. The other possibility is we say, oh, 1 week muna sa'yo, 1 week sa akin, but without prejudice of who really owns it. But even this example is not accurate because for you to go to court, you have to have a municipal court or city court or RTC, its equivalent, that has its jurisdiction, has the laws, and has an enforcement mechanism. In the case of territorial dispute, that belongs with the ICJ. No? And the ICJ will not take cognizance of the case unless both countries give their consent. And China did not give their consent in the arbitration award. What makes us think they will give their consent in the ICJ? Now, there was a proposal go to the Security Council. The permanent members of the Security Council can veto any resolution. And China is a member of the permanent council it's a permanent member of the Security Council. So, you know, there are many suggestions. But it's our job to see which one are feasible. Feasible in the sense that what will be the effect to us. So right now, the President is concerned about a growing population, yet food supplies are dwindling. Yes, the Department of Agriculture is doing good in rice and other goods by putting up the production, but it's still not as fast as the growing of population. So the President wants to attack it always. Have a program that people will only have the number of children they really want to have. Have a program to increase production, whether it's pork, beef, fisheries, vegetables, etc. But we also have to have a foreign policy that allows all of this. I'll give you an example. One of the most inclusive industries is tourism. And right now, between Korea and China, that's such a big market for our tourism industry. Why is the tourism industry so inclusive? Because for every 2 to 3 tourists, one job is created. Because there are some, for example, real estate. No? Real estate helps a lot of people, from the construction workers to the BPOs to the owners of the township. No? But it's not always that inclusive. But in tourism, from your boat ride, your bus ride, your riding through aviation, your tourist guide, yung pasalubongs, diba, the shopping, accommodations, food, all of this contribute to a better economy and better life for all Filipinos. So you would see that our policy regarding the West Philippine Sea, South China Sea, and our neighbors have also given us dividends in the build, has also given us dividends in agriculture, in selling mangoes, bananas, pineapples, and has also given us huge dividends in tourism. So you also have to look at that. That's why when I answered President Aquino, that's what I said. You can't just look at one part of your policy and then say, bahala na kay Batman, we'll leave it up to what help. Hindi pwedeng kesera-sera na lang ang answer mo sa lahat. You have to look at the implications of every step of your action.
Sir, mabulang, on another issue, over the weekend, we congratulated Cambodia for its quote, successful elections. But we also note that the US, the EU, Australia, Japan have expressed their concerns about the credibility of the Cambodian elections. What are we congratulating Cambodia for?
Well, we have a difference of opinion. The Western countries sometimes have their standard of what election should be. We in the ASEAN and Asians know that elections are not only voting. There are forces out there to also, there are many factors. So I will not speak for that country, but we had observers there, And by the way, the opposition boycotted. So what was the job of our observers? To observe the electoral process, not their politics. So we're not judging their opposition. If they thought that it's best to boycott, go ahead and boycott. But as far as the actual election, it went on well. Now, who cannot participate? It's easy for the West to just say this or that. But the reality is each country has its own changes, and we congratulated their leaders, which is part of protocol. Anyone who takes over as foreign minister or as prime minister or president, you send each other congratulatory letters because you're going to be working with them. So even if you take a look at our democracy, there are questions to be made. Now questions are being made on our automated elections and the credibility. So it's part of democracy. So some will say, no, Philippine democracy is outstanding, it's very good. Some will say, no, there's a danger of a strongman rule, etc. So that's part of diplomacy. And if other countries have concerns, we respect that. Because part of other countries' foreign policy, is their kind of democracy, to be adopted by others. But we in the ASEAN were more understanding that this political from your political history to your political systems now, it takes time to develop, and it has to develop within your own culture.
Yeah, Secretary, good afternoon. I'm Melo Acuña from China Radio International. While waiting for the COC to come to reality, wouldn't it be better for the Philippines to push for a fishery agreement with all the countries within the South China Sea? First point.
Yes, agree totally, and we're doing us first. So we have a tentative agreement with China. We continue to talk. If it works out, then there's a pilot project ready that we can tell the other countries. I sat down with the Vietnamese Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister to discuss also our fishermen, because now and then there are some arguments between Vietnamese and Philippine fishermen. But I agree with you. COC is one track. We can get that done. But whether it's protecting the environment, safety of life at seas, fisheries, we can pursue that track independently. And if we can come together with an agreement on that, then better. But sometimes the enforcement mechanism is the sticky issue. So let's say if we agree on fishing, if no one catches anyone, or no one employs any illegal fishing, or no problem. But once, let's say, a Filipino, a Vietnamese, a Chinese national does illegal fishing, uses dynamite or gets giant clam, who will apprehend who? Is it the Chinese Coast Guard, Philippine Coast? So these are the sticky issues. But having said that, the principle is sound, and we're working on that.
Pardon my ignorance, but what do you mean by the Philippines' position now as country coordinator for China?
Each dialogue and strategic partner of ASEAN is assigned a coordinating country or country coordinator. Because the 10 countries, I think in our last ARF, we were either 27 or 28 foreign ministers, including the friends of the chair. The chair is allowed to invite 1 to 3 friends usually. So we have the 10 plus 1 dialogue. So if it's ASEAN, Japan, ASEAN, Australia, then you have the East Asia Summit, then you have the ASEAN plus 3 APT, then you have the ARF. So to get all of that done, we assign a country coordinator. So that country coordinator is one of the 10 ASEAN. Then you stick like glue to the country. So like for example, we're the outgoing country coordinator of Canada. So despite some issues between Philippines and Canada, we work closely together. We invited Prime Minister Trudeau to be a guest of the we welcomed warmly Prime Minister Trudeau as one of our partners in ASEAN there. No? So that's an example. No? Ang in-invite natin pala noon was EU, and the UN Secretary.
One last point from my part. Can you please update us on the latest developments in Libya? How effective are diplomats in listening to the developments? Thank you.
Well, it's always a great matter and a serious matter when there is danger to liberty or life of any nationals. We're in a very good position to understand feelings because there have been abductions in the past in the Philippines by the Abu Sayyaf. So in the same way that as the victim now, Libya will understand, our sentiments and how we long for the early resolution by the return of our nationals, and we hope that they're treated well and returned well. We also know that there are difficulties on their part. So in the same manner that it's not the Philippine government who abducted these foreign nationals on Philippine soil, but the Philippine government also has responsibilities to each and every nationality that comes to the Philippines. That's why we also have warnings, right? We have warnings. Their countries have travel advisories in certain cases. Now, the Filipinos and the Korean who were abducted had good intentions. They wanted to help rebuild Libya. They're part of if I'm not mistaken, a contract for water in the area. And remember, we have other citizens who are also in Libya that anytime we expect to be coming home, and Secretary Bello of Dole is on standby to pick them up. No? So there is a high-level team that's working together now. I can confirm that one of those in the team is Secretary Simatu, because he has wide experience in the Middle East and a lot of friends there in the Gulf, in the GCC. And then DFA, our security forces, Dole, and other agencies, including the Secretary for Minda and the Special Envoy for, the Presidential Advisor on OFW's Secretary Dabs Mamao are also involved. No? So we're following the President's instructions. There was a meeting 10 a.m. There's discussions ongoing with our diplomats, and so far the Libyans have made this a priority.
Will we send our frigates there?
Let's see how it progresses, and yung usapan. I can say at this time we're taking any and all orders of our President seriously, and we're working on it. Then we'll make a recommendation at the proper time. We hope that they're safely returned at the soonest possible time. That will so that there's nothing more that we have to do, whether it's symbolic or strategic.
Sir, good afternoon. Sir, you were talking about the working group that President Dept has approved on your recommendation. Can you tell us more about this group? Who are in the group? What are their marching orders? And can you give us timelines?
Yes and no. I'll give you more details when I meet you again, because I just got his approval in principle. But I can tell you that the areas where I want to have expertise at the highest level, meaning the cabinet level, for the environment, the DNR, oil and gas, the Department of Energy, for security, NSA, NICA, and DND, and also the Interior Ministry, the ALG. And then on legal, DOJ, Solgen, and then a group of advisors. In our arbitration award, we had a team. It's a legal team. In this case, it's not a legal team that's going to file a case, but it's a legal team that's going to advise us and going to help us negotiate. And the legal team will have three components: oil and gas, constitutional law, and UNCLOS experts. We did experts from all three. Timeline is still ASAP. And maybe the only other detail I can say is that China is also ready with their working group. I'll let them make their own announcements. But as soon as both sides have working group, at least we can talk. I'm not sure if we can agree, but at least we can start talking.
Sir, ito ba yung ministerial level o USEC level?
Both. So, depende sa sino mag-meet. So, we'll definitely have our representatives under us. In the DFA and foreign ministers, it usually starts from the bottom and works its way up. But in this case, because of the urgency, for example, for us, for the need of for energy needs, and also because of the momentum, COC relationship with China, there are things that we are doing now at our level to help speed this up.
So hindi ba ito contract negotiation?
Now, the contract negotiations, this is my prediction, we have to agree with. We will leave to the commercial entities.
So it's a private sector led?
Yes. Yes.
Anong role ng government?
The framework. Para di ba natigil yun dati? So it was stopped because governments couldn't agree and the dispute got worse. So our job now is to put a framework, that's acceptable both to China and to the Philippines. And then the first part of the agreement should be exploration. If there's nothing there, what are we discussing? But once we find what is there, and if it is commercially viable to to go into oil and gas development, But if you look at both the Chinese and the US estimates, it's a huge deposit that will really help not only our country but each and every Filipino.
So meron bang specific area yung river agreement na kino-cover? Is it Green Bank or Spratlys or...
You know, I'd really like to answer you right now, but I'm more comfortable doing it with Sec Pusi. So I'll try to, we're talking this week, maybe early next week we can give you a, you know, more on that. But I don't want to speak in behalf of both the DOE and the Secretary of Energy and the, but you do know, I mean, you're award-winning journalist, you do know which companies have existing contracts, both the area and the... Yes. So, alam niyo naman kung ano yung na-hold eh. So, yun.
By
By the way, I'll tell you why we're looking at the existing. Because it takes so much time for this, di ba, oil and gas exploration and development is just like building power plants. There's such a huge time that you need to get this done. So if you start from scratch, pick an area and you start from step one, but there are existing service areas and contracts wherein they already did preliminary, no? And one of them is between a Philippine company and a Chinese state-owned
CNOC.
Yes. Okay.
Sir,
Yun na.
can you say that itong framework will be a model for future cooperation with other
Yes
countries?
and no, because there are already other countries that have joint development and exploration. So, but yes, because I think ours is one of the most hotly contested area.
Sir, another question, another topic. So, I want to find out how the foreign ministers of Asia discussed the trade war between US and China, and what would be the RECP role to mitigate this?
Let me just reiterate the official positions because I don't want to say what was said in the retreat, because precisely why we have the retreat, so that you can pour out your hearts and minds and try to get a solution. No? But first, RCP, no, or RCEP, yun, everyone wants it. But there are some stumbling blocks and we're all working on it. No? And it's always best to make an argument by practicing what you preach. So if we all say that there should be free trade, there should be a rule-based, internationally accepted rule-based format or mechanism for free trade, for fair trade, you know, if we sign these agreements, doing is better than just preaching. Having said that, in the different Presscons of different foreign ministers, many have expressed concern about not only the trade war, but also a possible disregard of a rule-based approach in international trade. You know, and you can't blame each and every country, whatever their side is on the trade war, because we know that in wars, in all wars, especially trade wars, no one wins. Everyone are losers. And the problem with some of us is that we're not involved in a trade war, but we get hit badly. You know? But there are always also opportunities. So our economic team is also keeping a keen eye. And in fact, they had some studies done on how our economy can be resilient and continue to grow at these levels or even higher, just in case the trade war is escalated. But you know, theory and practice. Sometimes in theory you can have this plan, but you know, trade and economy is also about perception. So the more perception of instability or of not knowing what will happen or escalation of the trade war, you know, causes the inflow or outflow of capital, where it maybe puts a hold on certain investments, you know. So these are all of concern to everyone.
So, ilang percent na po yung RCEP?
I'll ask Sec Mona because he's the one personally on it. Umuwi lang ako with some questions on the Philippine position, and I started discussing with Sec. Mon Lopez yesterday during the cabinet meeting. Then I think there's also one country na mas marami, one country out ASEAN na mas maraming mga concerns pa. But the ASEAN nations are all talking to the country that we want this agreement.
Thank you.
Sir, balikan ko lang yung Libya. Is it true, sir, that the President Dept during the command conference that pinatawag with the cabinet members dahil doon? And your personal take, sir, about sending our warships there?
The President did in fact get really upset. He had to cool off for a while before coming back to the cabinet meeting because he cannot accept that a Filipino will be a target around the world when we're doing so much to build other countries. In the same manner, every time makakita siya ng pictures ng abuse na Filipino, wherever they are, he gets upset. So, having said that, it wasn't all about him being upset. It's about finding solutions. So he gave his orders, he gave his bottom lines or red lines, he got the input from different agencies, then nag-huddle kaming tinuro niya. Okay? So, I don't want to preempt whatever actions we'll take, so I won't answer your second question with your permission. But we're hoping that there will be, that the Libyans, and we're thankful that they have made this a priority. And we're hopeful that since they have made it a priority, they'll be able to recover 3 Filipinos and the Korean as soon as possible time and in good health.
Hello, sir. A question from Xinhua News Agency. We know that in this October, the China and ASEAN countries will hold a joint maritime exercise in the South China Sea. And all the 11 countries will send their teams to participate in it. So could you please tell us what is the significance of this joint maritime exercise in South China Sea?
Well, let me start by just giving the layman or the everyday Filipino and Chinese a view of the South China Sea, West Philippine Sea. Sometimes when there are car accidents in subdivisions that have 4 lanes or 2 big lanes, you think to yourself, how can these 2 cars collide when it's so big? So it's the same thing in the South China Sea. Oceans, probably one reason why they're called oceans, are just so big. And if you're on a ship and you look around, you can't believe that there can be an accident. But there are accidents. Militaries around the world sometimes have accidents with their own ships, when it's a fleet. Commercial accidents have happened, especially those carrying, for example, oil in the past that has become an issue. So it's very important that there are joint military exercises, if only to prevent accidents and for military to military relations to grow so that we can talk to each other better. There are other reasons for military exercises, that's obvious. There are strategic reasons, political reasons, reasons of national security. In the case of the U.S., the freedom of navigation operations is part of their maritime policy. But for me, the most basic is that we don't want accidents to happen that can lead to conflict in this area. And if you take an aerial view of the South China Sea compared to other oceans or other seas around the world, you can see the narrowness, and for example, the one thing we're discussing is the features. These features, especially those that even on high tide are above water level, can severely damage ships as they navigate the oceans. So the exercise is important. Now, each country has to decide regarding its own strategic plan and point of view which exercise to join or not, But we're taking a progressive but cautious view on all of this, and hoping that the COC will in fact have a framework that will make all of this as a matter of fact every year, so that we can find some kind of solution in the future. A good example is DPRK and ROK, North and South Korea. I mean, for decades, no one saw hope that the war will end. Until now, they are still actually in a ceasefire or armistice. So, but after the summit, of course, there are still real issues being discussed. We're hoping that there will be a declaration that the war is over. So miracles can happen, but we have to take those steps, confidence-building measures, steps of cooperation to find this. But even if when we do have, it causes irritation. I'll give you a good example. This was on the news last week. Yung radio messages between and from China and from the Philippines. The civilian population are more irritated with the tone and the actual messages. But among our military, it's just routine. So when they go into what we believe is and stand for is Philippine waters, our military signals or calls the vessels, whether they're Chinese, Vietnamese, and say na you're entering Filipino waters. So when our ships enter what they perceive or they claim, they will also send messages. So to them, it's already routine. But to us, when we hear what they say, because we won't say that to each other. If I'm rude to you here today, and I'm not usually rude to members of the media, criticize me. But off-cam, if we are sarcastic to each other, people won't understand if suddenly on-cam, why did the secretary call out, or why did that reporter tease the secretary that's uncalled for. So, it's really different when there's a routine, or it becomes routine, and when there's communication between two particular entities and the population as a whole. So I link that to the joint exercises. To these joint exercises, we get to know, even in words and culture, we meet. Sometimes things get lost in translation.
Sir, ako po si Cathy from UNTV. Magtatanungan po sana namin kung ano na po yung update dun sa mga nakidnap po ng Pilipino sa Libya po, at saka paano na po ba yung coordination po ng Philippines sa Libya?
The Libyan government has made it a priority. They have a high-level working group or committee where their interior ministry is also taking the lead. I don't want to speak more than that because, in the same way that when the Abu Sayyaf or any group claims responsibility for abduction here, the less information is usually better to give the people actually involved in the recovery operations or negotiations more room. But I can assure the families, we're in constant contact with the families of these Filipinos. And the President has already made some public proclamations, and we're taking all of that seriously.
Sir, Lord Dept po, reporter ng Filipino Star ngayon. Sir, verification lang po, meron daw pong mahigit 3,000 nakulong sa Malaysia mga Pinoy?
Meron pong bringing up na 2,000. If you're talking about yung ginawa ng gobyerno na clamp down doon sa illegal na pumapasok to look for work, that was 2,000 of different nationalities. I'll give you the exact number of Filipinos. I think it was 200 or 300, no? But we have the individuals' names. We've asked for consular, for them to be given consular services. But kung yun ang sinasabi mong in particular, no? Yun yung kasi, maraming pumasok na naka-tourist tapos gusto magtrabaho. So, actually, may amnesty program ang Malaysia, and they're actually willing to deport them. But some wants to stay or hoping that the amnesty will convert their status to be able to work there. Having said that, there are a lot of challenges and problems we're dealing with in Sabah with Filipinos there. No? And it's an ongoing thing, and I think we're working well with with the new Malaysian government and my counterparts to try to solve problems like access to education, health, etc. But the President has asked us whether death penalty or hindi, automatic magbigay ng assistance sa lahat ng Filipino na na-detain.
Hi, Secretary. I just want to ask again because a few days ago, I think you said that the draft framework agreement may be out by as early as September. Is that still true today?
With the creation of working groups in both sides, I am even more optimistic that we can come up with something this September. But remember, that was just me replying to all of you wanting to give more or less the soonest possible time. But I've always told you, it can happen tomorrow, it cannot happen at all, it can happen in a year. But why are we rushing? One, because Malampaya will run out in 2024. We're still praying we'll find more in Malampaya so that we can extend its life again. Second, because Philippine presidents have a 6-year term. And there is a gestation period, there's for joint development, you have to put test wells. Then after the test wells, then you'll confirm your study. So the sooner we get it done, the more possibility that it will become a reality. The sooner we get the agreement done, it will become a reality. Because if we move into, let's say, the 5th year of the presidency, chances are one or both sides of the commercial venture will say, let's wait first for the next administration and see what their policy is. So for us, since it's an urgent need and it will benefit all Filipinos, I want to work double time on it. And I'm hoping our side of the working group can do a lot this August, and then try to hit September or October.
Sir, just a follow-up. Are you seeing any risks that could stall the agreement?
Well, of course, public acceptability is a must. But leaders cannot always look at what is just popular. They have to look at what is good for their people. And then, of course, any agreement has to pass with flying colors the scrutiny of the Supreme Court. So the challenge is not on the Supreme Court, it's on us. The challenge is for us to be able to draft a framework or an agreement that the Supreme Court will have an easy time saying it's constitutional.
Sir, may we invite dalawang board members?
Once na nabuo na, because there's no use meeting na hindi na firm up yung stand mo. So again, I want to target September. Late August or early September. But the economic team of the Philippines is meeting with Chinese counterparts at a high level, just as what we're doing with Japan, to ensure that the projects committed, the loans, the build is not delayed.
Secretary, Huang Jinzhu from China Central Television. I think one of the outcome of this time's ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting is that we agree to speed up with the RCEP, and we expect that can finish that at the end of this year. So I would like to know how's the importance of the integration of ASEAN and the free trade, and how this kind of issues can benefit of the Philippines.
Well, if you put the Chinese population and the population of ASEAN together, that's more than 2 billion people. If you include India, that's more than 3 billion people. And I don't think there's any country, even including the richest countries, that don't have a problem with poverty or inclusivity. So some countries have bigger problems with poverty, some have smaller problems. China has been effective in reducing poverty, but free and fair trade helps each country address poverty helps countries build their economy, and also helps peace and stability. Because when there's no jobs, there's no economic activity, it's a breeding ground for rebellion, insurrection, diba? For ill feelings against the government, the world, against businessmen. So RCEP is very important because, as I stated a while ago, the best way of preaching is doing. So instead of just saying a rule-based order in international trade, free and fair trade, if we can get this RCEP or RCEP passed, then we'd be actually doing it by example. And it's very important. But I'll let the economists and economic team tell you the specifics and the areas where it will greatly benefit us. But for a country that wants to be more inclusive, like the Philippines, and we have a lot of micro and small enterprise, I think this will be a big help.
Leonardo Cry, French News Agency. Sir, can we have a timeline for the Libyan situation? When are we sending our team there? Who will they be meeting with? And when will there be a decision on whether they're going to send a frigate or not?
Well, our embassy people are already meeting with them from the first minute we found out. They have already given their input. In any abduction, the timeline is always ASAP. But remember, in the same manner that any other country can tell us we're giving you 5 days, 10 days, 15 days before we take other action if you don't release our nationals. It's easy to put a timeline if it's the certain government holding the people. But in this case, it's not the Libyan government that has abducted these people. So it wouldn't be prudent for me to say that ito yung timeline, etc. But the team is working on its own timeline. If this happens, we do this. If this happens, we do that. But it has to be in very close coordination with the Libyan government because they're the one on the ground, And this opened the eyes of everyone that there are a lot of places around the world that danger can come in different forms. So the Philippines, with 10 million Filipinos abroad, are vulnerable. So the government has to do more, whether having more jobs at home or whether finding markets where Filipinos will be safer. So let me update you as it happens or when we have news. But right now, it really just won't be more prudent for us to talk more on that case since high-level negotiations are underway. Yes. I won't. They met 10 o'clock today. So I don't know exactly who of them are going. But the President encouraged a high-level delegation to go. I should know by this afternoon. And I'll let them make the announcements. Okay?
Any ransom demands, Secretary? No demands for ransom so far?
As of the time I reported last night and then this morning, wala pa. No? So may I just end the session with thanking all of you and maybe just as a final rejoinder, unless President Aquino wants to discuss the issue, gusto ko lang ipabot sa kanya na sumagot ka naman, wag lang ewan. No? I think it's very important for our discussion and for the issue and policy to be clear to our people that you actually answer the questions. If you don't think I'm the right person to be accountable to, then it can be the Senate, it can be the media, but I think we need answers to these questions. And we were together in the past when we asked, diba? Kasama tayo, sinabi natin sa ibang mga presidente, sumagot ka naman, diba, na dapat accountable ka. So, I think it's a disservice to Filipino people to just say, i-google mo. So, baka naman pwede makiusap, sumagot ka naman kahit wag lang ewan. Thank you everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Good
It's taken from us, meaning you don't have a physical copy of the draft. It's taken by who? Sergeant.
Nurse lang.
So, pinakita sa mga minister.
Ray.
Pagka ganun ka complicated. Kasi kung lahat may kopya, kasi yes.
Ray.